Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something I think a lot of us have wrestled with. Those sweet cravings. They can be pretty relentless.
You really can.
We've got this really interesting personal log. It's called #2035, How I Reprogrammed My Sweet Cravings.txt. And basically our mission here is to dig into it and pull out some, practical strategies, things you can actually use to manage sugar without feeling totally deprived.
Yeah, and what jumped out at me right away, actually, was the start of the log. It mentions, get this, a protein beer for recovery.
Protein beer, okay.
Right? It kind of immediately throws that health versus indulgence thing into sharp focus, which is, exactly the tightrope we're talking about with sugar.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into it then. This whole struggle with sugar, it's not just some, abstract idea, is it?
No, not at all.
The person writing this log, they're really upfront, calls it a lifelong addiction. And there's even this bit about quieting a baby, like a 6-month-old, with Kit Kat.
Well,
I mean, that just makes it so relatable, doesn't it? Most of us, we've either been there or we know someone who has that kind of tricky relationship with sugar.
exactly. It's very down to earth. It's not presented as some high-level test of willpower. It's just a real account of a, frankly, super common challenge. But what's great is that it goes beyond just saying, yeah, this is hard. It really gets into the nitty-gritty of how they actually worked on changing things.
Right. And the big strategy, the cornerstone, it seems, is this personal mantra they used. It's, nothing is going to taste as good as I feel right now.
Simple, but powerful.
It sounds simple, yeah, but the way they use it seems crucial. It's not just words.
No, absolutely not. It's tied directly to consciously noticing when you're already feeling good, physically or emotionally.
Oh, okay.
Like the author mentions specifically, after a good workout or maybe feeling accomplished after finishing a task, you anchor the mantra to that actual positive feeling you're having right then.
So you actively recognize that feeling first, that post-exercise buzz or that sense of, yeah, I did that.
Precisely. And then when the craving hits, you bring in the visualization part.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, the log describes mentally playing out the contrast. So the 5 minutes of pleasure from the sweet thing versus how you might feel afterward, or how it impacts your goals over the next, say, 24 to 48 hours.
Thinking it through.
Yeah, really thinking through the consequences. It's about interrupting that automatic reach for sugar by asking, okay, how will this really play out?
There's an example in there, right, about ice cream after dinner.
Yeah, wanting it, feeling the urge, but then consciously choosing not to, focusing instead on that longer-term feeling, that well-being, rather than just the immediate hit.
Okay, and this is where it gets kind of interesting, maybe even a bit counterintuitive. It's not just about resisting when you happen to be tempted.
Right, that's a key point. The author talks about deliberately putting themselves in tempting spots.
Like walking through a bakery or down the candy aisle.
Exactly. Or even just staring into their own pantry. The idea isn't strict avoidance. It's about practicing using the mantra and the visualization in those moments.
So it's like building up mental muscle.
Kind of like exposure therapy, almost. You're building resilience by facing the trigger, not just running from it.
Okay, that makes sense. You're learning to handle it. And this seems to connect to that bigger idea, that we're sort of wired for instant gratification.
Yeah, the log touches on that psychological pull towards the quick reward. But it makes the point that often real lasting happiness comes from delaying that gratification. It gives you some context for why those cravings feel so strong sometimes.
So it's not just about brute force willpower. It's understanding the pull and then consciously choosing the longer game. And they also talk about finding alternatives, right? Not just saying no.
Oh, definitely. The example of making a healthy dessert with protein powder instead of reaching for ice cream, that's huge.
Yeah.
It shows it's not about feeling miserable and deprived. It's about finding swaps that are enjoyable and healthier. You have to find things that actually satisfy you in a different way.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you just feel like you're missing out all the time,
Yeah.
that's tough to sustain.
Exactly. And it's not always just about you either. The log mentions external stuff too.
Like having support.
Yeah, the author mentions their spouse is also health conscious. That shared goal, that supportive environment, it can make a massive difference.
Right, having someone else on board.
And just the idea of accountability, having someone you can kind of check in with who knows what you're aiming for, that can be really motivating.
A built-in buddy system almost. Okay, now this next bit seems to really tie it all together. This idea of shifting your whole mindset around it.
Yes. The author connects resisting a craving to cultivating what they call a winning versus a losing mindset. So every time you successfully navigate that urge, you frame it as a small win. And that reinforces a positive self-image. It strengthens your belief that you can make these choices. It builds momentum.
So each win makes the next one feel a bit more possible. A positive cycle instead of feeling like you're constantly failing.
Exactly. And then there's this concept, the last Dorito fallacy. I thought this was pretty insightful.
The last Dorito. Okay, explain that.
It's challenging that idea that once you start eating something like quote-unquote unhealthy, you just have to finish it.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
Right. But the author points out that last chip or cookie or whatever,
Yeah.
it rarely tastes as good as the first one. Often the satisfaction really drops off, so why force yourself to finish it just out of habit?
It's about being mindful, I guess. Actually noticing if you're still enjoying it.
Precisely. Breaking that autopilot must-finish bag mode.
And speaking of things like Doritos, processed foods, the log touches on something pretty stark there.
Yeah, it draws an analogy basically saying some processed foods are almost engineered for addiction. A bit like tobacco.
Wow, that's strong.
It is. It highlights how powerful these cravings can be. And that it's not always just about personal weakness. There are external factors in how these foods are made.
And there was that reference to Doritos being used as kindling, like fire starter.
Yeah, suggesting their actual composition. It's a pretty vivid image. Makes you think about what's really in there.
It definitely does. Makes you think twice. Now, okay, alternatives came up again regarding drinks this time, like soda.
Right. The idea of maybe switching from, say, regular Coke to Coke Zero is mentioned as a potential first step, less drastic than quitting cold turkey.
A stepping stone approach.
Possibly. But the log also acknowledges that ultimately just eliminating those sugary drinks might be the more direct, maybe more effective route for some people. It kind of depends on the person.
And then there's that other analogy, the trifecta. That one stuck with me.
Ah, yes, the trifecta. It's kind of humorous, but pointed. It groups Coke, cigarettes, and a lottery ticket together.
Okay.
As representing this cycle of, let's say, less healthy habits mixed with this kind of fleeting hope for a quick fix or escape. It's a memorable way to frame the decision around sugary drinks, connecting it to broader patterns.
It definitely paints a picture. Coke, cigarettes, lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And one last piece seemed to be about just moving your body.
Yeah, physical activity. The log notes that things like running or sports can actually naturally reduce cravings for stuff like soda.
Oh, interesting.
And apparently after exercising, plain water just starts tasting better, more appealing. Your body's needs kind of shift.
So getting active can sort of nudge your cravings in a healthier direction automatically.
It seems to be the idea, yeah.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
if you had to boil it down, what's the main takeaway for someone listening who wants to tackle their own sweet cravings?
I think the core message is that it's really a process. It's not just about willpower. It's about using conscious mental tools like that mantra and the visualization we talked about.
Right.
It's about making proactive choices, being aware of your environment, finding those healthier swaps that actually work for you, and really shifting your focus, moving from that short-term sugar hit to the longer-term feeling of well-being and reaching your goals.
That feels much more manageable than just try harder. It's about having a strategy.
Exactly, a toolkit.
Okay, so here's a thought for you, the listener, to take away. Thinking about that mantra, nothing is going to taste as good as I feel right now. And the visualization. What's maybe one small, deliberate thing you could try today? One tiny shift to start reshaping that relationship with sugar? What's one small win, like we discussed, that you could aim for to start building that healthier mindset? Something to think about.
Good question to ponder.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.